Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy human being you. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's true crime video. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this that we're forced to deal with on the day today you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or Bratterstein, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the tragic and totally avoidable murder of 25-year-old Tiana Notice, a woman who helped solve her own murder. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us, one of us, one of us. Now, before I get into telling you the details of this case, I first need to say a thank you to the sponsor of today's video, and that is Dossier. Are you familiar with Dossier? Well, if not, you're about to get familiar with Dossier. Dossier is a fragrance company, and for the longest times you guys have heard me singing the praises of Dossier and how they make perfumes that rival luxury brands but at a fraction of luxury prices. Where most perfumes can cost anywhere from $50 to hundreds of dollars, how dare they? Dossier's perfumes range only from $29 to $49, and they offer bulk deals with up to 25% off plus free shipping when you buy 3 or more bottles. Like, they have a ton of ways that you can save your dollar bills. Y'all, and did you know that they've started to branch out into another area of the scent market? They are making candles, and they are making candles that are inspired by some of their most popular fragrances. And if you know me, you know I am a candle woman. I'm a candle person. There's candles all over this home. That's the one place that I really like to splurge and treat myself. Look at this big boy I have to share with you today. This is a candle, and this is their floral rose candle, which is inspired by the Le Labo Rose 31 A Day perfume. A Day perfume, and look, it comes with the little boop, boop. This just smells so good. This smells like, to me, okay, like a really hot man brought you a bouquet of fresh roses. Like, it's spicy, but it's rosy, and they actually do have a perfume based on this, obviously, because all of their candles are based on their best scents of perfume, and I have that perfume. So if I ever wanted the feminine urge to make my body smell like my home, and take home with you if you are the type of person who leaves the house, which I'm not, but home is where the heart is, and home is where your perfume and your candles match. Right? Right. Cool. Yes. So as I'm sure you can tell, the fact that Dossier has candles now is very exciting to me. And the most exciting thing of all, which, I mean, this is going to be a big selling point for me, or if you are like me, is the fact that they are cruelty-free. Because most candle companies are not cruelty-free, and for that matter, most perfume companies, like luxury perfume companies, are also not cruelty-free. But you know who is? Dossier. Anyways, great news. Dossier is offering members of the Brat Pack 10% off of their new favorite perfume or candle order, or multiple free perfumes and multiple candle orders. All you have to do is click the link in my description box and use the code BRATTERSTEIN at checkout. And if you do that, you will get a discount. And they're already such a good deal, right? Because they're already like lowly priced, priced reasonably, fairly, and you get those deals with free shipping when you combine multiple bottles. Like, I don't think you're going to find a better deal out there. No, I mean, I know you're not going to find a better deal out there. So make sure to click the link in my description box and use the code BRATTERSTEIN at checkout so they know that I'm the one that sent you, because that helps my channel. And, you know, take advantage of getting your new favorite perfume or candle, or both, and getting a discount on it today. And now I want to say another thank you to Dossier for sponsoring today's video, and a big thank you to you guys for always being so supportive of all of my sponsors. Without sponsors like Dossier, I couldn't do this as consistently as I do. You rock. Don't ever change. All right, now that I'm done spreading the good word of Dossier, we can go ahead and get into this video. Now, this is a video on a case that I heard about a long time ago. I was watching some show on IDTV with my Gammy, and Tiana's case was on it. I can't remember which show it was, but the reason it stuck out to me was for a couple, well, there was two like main reasons that her case stuck out in my head. The first was that part of Tiana's murder was caught on camera. Obviously, like, the whole thing was not caught on camera. They wouldn't show, I would hope that they would not show that, but you do see part of it. And it is chilling to see. It's one of those things to hear about and for us to discuss is one thing, but to actually see and hear her voice is a whole nother situation, right? So that made it stick out to me. And another thing is that her murder seems so frustratingly avoidable. The entire time you're watching that or looking into it for me when I was researching this case, it's just maddening. You want to just scream out and shake people and be like, pay attention to this girl, but authorities never did, and because of that, a beautiful, vibrant woman lost her life. So today I'm going to tell you the entire story. I read all the things so that you do not have to. And once I am done telling you the story, I want you to answer the question of the day. I'm going to give it to you now so you can have it, rocking around in your brain as we go through this entire case. But at the end, I want you to answer this question. What do you think could have been done to save Tiana Notice? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below after I give you all of the information. Now, with all of that said, come gather around and let me tell you the story of the tragic and avoidable murder of 25-year-old Tiana Notice. I want to start this video off with a quote, and this is a quote from the prosecutor who would later prosecute Tiana's murderer. The prosecutor said, and I quote, "It's the oldest motive in the world. If he couldn't have her, nobody could have her. He was planning this all along. Tragically, he completed his mission. His mission was murder." So our story takes place on February 14th, 2009, Valentine's Day. Tiana Notice was heading to her home in Plainsville, Connecticut. She wasn't planning to actually stay there that night, even though, it was her home. She had been having some issues, so she was planning to just make a quick stop, grab some items, grab some laundry, and then head to her mother's for the weekend so that they could spend some time together. She could get some distance from her apartment and just kind of, have a nice time with her mother. Some time that she very much needed because she had been under a lot of stress recently. But this stop home would turn out to be a very big mistake. Not a mistake on her part because she couldn't know what was going to happen to her. And it wasn't a wrong place, wrong time situation because this was her place. It was her right to be in her place and to feel safe in her home. But when she got there, she was attacked viciously by a man lying in wait with a knife. During her attack, obviously Tiana started to scream, and the sound of her voice brought neighbors out to, one, see what was going on, and two, to render aid to her. And when they came outside, they saw a vehicle tear off, driving super fast away from the scene, and they found Tiana lying in the ground, covered in blood. Even though she had been stabbed multiple times, she had the strength within her to pull out her phone and call 911 herself, telling the operator on the other line that she had been stabbed and she was bleeding to death. By the time police and paramedics arrived on the scene, Tiana was already unconscious, so they loaded her in an ambulance and they rushed her to the hospital, but it was too late. There was no way they could help her. So by the time her parents got there, because they received a call letting them know that she had been attacked and they showed up at the hospital, they were told by the doctors that they tried everything they could do, but she had just lost too much blood and she was pronounced dead at 11:45 p.m. Now, before we get into the specifics of what happened here and the aftermath of her murder, I first want to talk about who Tiana was and how we got here in the first place. Tiana Angelique Notice was born February 4th, 1984 in Worcester, Massachusetts, and she was one of 4 children, the only daughter with 3 brothers born to parents Alvin and Kathy. Growing up, she also had a stepmother named Veronica and a stepsister named Natasha. She also had grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, a lot of people who loved her very much. She had a big family she was very close with. Tiana was loyal. She was loyal to her friends. She was loyal to her family. She was one of those people who just stuck it out. She always made the time and effort to keep up with her relationships, no matter how far away they might be. She would always make the effort to call or even drive over. Like, distance was not a factor for her if it was somebody who she loved or someone who needed her. She was said to be larger than life with a heart of gold that every person she came in contact with just couldn't help but be entranced by, and they couldn't help but love her. She was artistic. She would write her own songs and her own music because she loved to dance and she loved to sing. She would even sing often in the choirs, like the choirs and at church and things like that. She was very big on that. And she would do it all with a smile that was said to light up the world, not just the room, the world. Tiana was also said to just be brilliant. She was one of those kids that you knew even when she was a child that she was smart. By like 6 years old, they were like, oh, this little girl's got something. And she was way ahead of all of her classmates academically. And she was also one of those kids that went on to start taking college classes while she was still in high school, which she didn't love high school, but she did it, and she did it with a smile, even though it was kind of not her favorite thing. But when she went to college, that's where she really blossomed. In college, she ended up getting a bachelor's degree in political science, and she was almost done completing her master's degree in public policies, communication, and paralegal studies at a college that was just down the road from her sister Natasha, and she was considering a career in politics or law, which was good because her mother had always told her that she should probably be a lawyer because she was one of those kids, one of those people in general, that was very opinionated and very big on arguing her point. Not in a way that was aggressive, but just like she would have been great in debate, she would be a great attorney. My boss has always told me this too, not my boss now because I quit that job, but when I was a paralegal, my boss was always like, you need to be an attorney because you fight me on every little thing. At only 25 years old, Tiana had really lived a life, and a life worth living, and had done good things to help other people with her time on this earth. In college, she quickly became an activist due to her compassion and concern for disenfranchised communities, and she went on to be the founder of something called the Roosevelt Institution on her campus, which was basically a nonprofit group that conducted policy research on pressing political issues, and they would then present these issues to policymakers to try to be the change they wanted to see in the world. She also volunteered at the Women's Center on campus and was a member of the Hartford alumni, was on the dean's list, was an honor roll student, and even received an award for her pro bono work that she did as a legal assistant. Now that's already a lot, right? But in addition to everything I said, while taking all those classes in college, she was also working like part-time or full-time, I think it was full-time, at another university. She was like really doing the most. She was a girl boss. She was girl bossing, as the kids say. Do the kids say that? I feel like the kids say that. And she just had very attainable, aspirational goals for her. She was going to get her law degree. She was going to get a PhD, and she was going to do the damn thing. She was one of those people who didn't just talk about it, she beat about it, and she was a serious powerhouse of a woman. And when I describe her, like, so far, the way she was really hardworking and determined and all of that, for whatever reason, when I picture a person like that, I picture like Selma Blair in Legally Blonde, all buttoned up and stuffy and no fun and very prim and proper. But she wasn't like that. That's not how Tiana was. Tiana was definitely more of an Elle Woods. Even though she was all of those amazing things, very hardworking, all of those things, she was also always down to have fun. She was the type of person who would do anything to make herself have fun or to make those around her laugh, whether it be just like singing into a hairbrush, like a round brush, or making fun and poking fun at her siblings. She would like imitate their voices and do anything she could to just make people laugh. And she would go on to tell these stories that she probably told a million times before, but they were so funny to her that she was going to tell them again because it would make her laugh. Her favorite food was chicken and McDonald's French fries, and she loved the color purple, and she loved Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and Milky Way chocolate bars. Panera Bread and the Cheesecake Factory were some of her favorite things and places to eat. Her favorite book was the Bible, and she thought that God was good. She was a real person, you know, and now she's gone, and that's horrible. Now, who killed Tiana? This was a person, a man, a human, who at one point she cared a great deal about. This was a man named James Carter Jr., and he was Tiana's ex-boyfriend. Tiana and he had met about a year before she was murdered, and when they met, it was kind of like he got in there at just the right time, because Tiana was kind of wounded. She was fresh off of a breakup with her longtime boyfriend. Like, her and her high school boyfriend had been together for 5 years, and they had just broken up because he was going to go to college out of state. It's really sad too, because to me, when I was hearing about Tiana and her ex, they sounded so precious, so pure. Like, so she sang in the choir and he was the minister of music at the church. So that's how they sort of, you know, they were just, and God was so important to her. So that just seemed like such a sweet thing. And apparently the two were inseparable, and they had been together such a long time. And now that he was going off to school, they realized, like, we've only ever really had one another. And now that we're going to have this space, maybe we should just kind of see what happens, see what options are out there for us, try other things, and see if life brings us back together after some time. So Tiana's sad, she's raw from a breakup, and she's supposed to be out there trying to see what else is out there for her. So when James reaches out to her on MySpace, he seems sort of appealing to her. And side note, when I was looking into this case, all of the reportings I saw, like not all of them, but a lot of the reportings I saw and like interviews with people were like, oh, the two met on a dating site. I'm just curious, would you have considered MySpace a dating site? I never really considered it to be that specifically. I thought it was more of like a friendship, like Instagram, social media type thing. But it's not to say people can't meet on and date on there. I did meet my husband on MySpace, but I wasn't on there trying to meet somebody. So I'm just kind of curious what you guys think about that. It doesn't really matter, and I'm going to stop talking about it now, but I was just curious because it kind of popped in my head. Okay. So when he added her on MySpace and she looked at his profile, it seemed promising enough. He seemed like he had his shit together and all of that, but Tiana wasn't really interested in actually dating somebody at that time. But when she was looking at it, she told her best friend about it. And you know how best friends be. Which, side note, another side note, but a precious side note, Tiana and her best friend had the same birthday, which to me, I'm like, how pure is that to share a birthday with your best friend? Like, oh, it's adorable. But anyways, in true best friend fashion, she was like, why don't you just meet up with him? Why don't you just see what's up? You know, like, talk to him, hang out with him, see if it's a good fit, or just have some fun. And Tiana was like, you know, maybe I could. He's cute enough and I am single. When James and Tiana met, they liked each other. They hit it off pretty quickly. She thought he was a good match for her. He seemed like he had his stuff together. He had a good job in insurance and he owned his own home and he was really nice to her. He said that he didn't have any kids yet. He didn't have a family yet, but he wanted to. He wanted to settle down. He wanted to get married. That was something he wanted in life. And he even told her that he'd be willing to go to church with her, which was something important to her. So the two would do that. They'd go to church together. They'd pray together. They'd worship together, which was very important to her. He even bought her tires for her car, which, like, tires ain't cheap, you know what I mean? And he got her a phone and put it on his phone plan. And he even, like, offered for them to move in together. Remember, she died a year after meeting him, so that would have been pretty early to do something like that. And she did turn that down, but suffice it to say, things were more or less pretty official and things were going well for the two of them. Unfortunately, though, the good times would not last, because about 6 months into Tiana and James's relationship, James ended up getting arrested for a domestic abuse charge that he had from a former girlfriend. So he went to jail and he served 5 months. And while in jail, Tiana stayed with him. She'd go and visit him. She'd write him letters. And she only did this because she had, like, a big heart. And James had told her the only reason he got arrested for this was because he was a young black man who was being targeted by police, which is manipulative and predatory. And it's a disservice to him, especially when there are so many young black men who are targeted by police. And yet he used this as an excuse, which, spoiler alert, was not true, and very much frustrates me that he would manipulate her in such a way. Now, once James was released, the two got back together, and it was like no time had passed. They picked things right up where they left off. But it was after James got out of jail that so many more things came to light for Tiana, and so many more lies exposed themselves. Just hold on. So after he got out of jail, his son came to stay with him, to visit with him, because now he wasn't in jail. Yeah, his son. Remember how he told Tiana he didn't have kids? Well, when his son had to come and stay with him and visit him because he was out of jail, this was something that he couldn't really hide from Tiana. So she finds out he has a kid. So that's one lie. She finds out he doesn't own his house. Another lie. She finds out that he doesn't have the job he said he had. Another lie. He didn't graduate college. He had kids. He didn't have the job he said he had. And she found out that when he had gone to jail, it actually was his fault. It wasn't just that he was targeted. And this is because he was a violent man who had a history of domestic violence. He had a record, dude. He had 2 previous convictions for other violent assaults as well in 2002 and 2006. Tiana's mother, Kathy, said of James, and I quote, "I don't know what you saw in him because I never met him in person. I only saw photos of him and I immediately disliked him. You may want to call it mother's intuition." Now, for whatever reason, Tiana did not leave him right away. The two ended up staying together another 6 months before she finally decided that the two needed to break up. And this is when she started to believe that he was cheating on her. So it's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. You already did all of this. I forgave you for that. And now you're going to have the audacity to cheat on me? Well, deuces, guy, I'm out. So she decides that she's going to end the relationship. But you know, they've been together a little while, so she has some stuff at James's house. So she has her best friend, Anna. Remember her best friend? I don't know if I told you her name was Anna. She had her best friend, Anna's either boyfriend or husband, I don't know if they were married at the time, go over with her to retrieve her items so that things would go cool and it would be like a nice smooth transition. So she gets her stuff and she thinks that's the end of it. But it wasn't, because James was desperate and determined to get her back, but she wasn't having it. She wasn't giving him the time of day. And this is when things started to go horribly wrong. The more Tiana ignored James, the more obsessed he became with winning her back. He went from just being an ex-boyfriend who really, really wanted to get the love of his life back to a stalking, harassing asshole. He started calling her constantly, emailing her, showing up at places that she would be, even though he shouldn't know why she was there. And she was not having it. She refused to engage. So the more that she refused to engage, the more upset he got. And he decided he was going to make her life as difficult as possible if she was going to have the audacity to make his life so difficult by not loving him. Whatever. So he actually goes to police and he makes a report against Tiana saying that she attacked him, that she punched him in the eye, and that she kicked out either his headlights or his taillights, and, you know, wanted to file assault charges against her. But police looked at him and they're like, you say she punched you in the face, but like, your face is looking pretty pristine, bro. Like, not pristine because, you know, ugly soul, ugly body, but they were like, this looks weird. So they go and they talk to her, and after speaking to her, they're like, there isn't really enough here to arrest her or even move forward at all, because they believed it was kind of bullshit. So a few days after this, Tiana decides, I should probably get my own restraining order, because if he's willing to go this far, go and lie to police about me, I should probably have some protection for myself. So she actually goes and she files an ex parte, which if you don't know what an ex parte is, it is like an emergency hearing. I had to do so many ex partes when I was a paralegal, it was crazy. And she was getting the emergency hearing so that she could get a restraining order. So she goes to the court, and the restraining order said that the defendant, quote, shall refrain from threatening, harassing, stalking, assaulting, molesting, sexually assaulting, or attacking the victim. And the order was effective for 6 months. Tiana was making it abundantly clear that she was over James and wanted nothing to do with that relationship. I mean, the restraining order says that pretty loud and clear in my opinion, but it was after filing this that Tiana started to get some weird emails. And these emails were coming in from a girl named Jessica, who was saying that she was James's new girlfriend. And she was sending her weird messages that were threatening and just like step back, ma'am, I don't know you. But some of the messages to Tiana from Jessica said, quote, trust me, baby girl, you're gonna lose everything, end quote. As God is my witness, punishment is on the way, so be prepared, end quote. You will have bad luck, you hear me? Remember this email when karma bites you in the ass, end quote. And she would tell Tiana, like, how dare you go out and get a restraining order against a man who doesn't even want you? She had that kind of energy, and it was just like, can I catch a break? I'm just trying to get away from this guy. Now after this, Tiana does call the police, because technically this could be considered James contacting her through someone else, which is also not allowed. So police go, they speak to James, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, you know, that's my girlfriend who's doing it. He gives the cops her phone number, her information, a description of her so that they can speak to her. But the cops were kind of like, these emails are sort of vague and not really threatening, so they didn't do anything about it. Now, since this wasn't really seeming to work on Tiana, his girlfriend reaching out to her as well, he decides, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to file a restraining order against her as well, and not just for himself, but also for his new girlfriend. So this made it so that James and Tiana had to appear together in court. So he was just trying as hard as he could to get away to see her. So they show up and they need to kind of plead their case as to why they should be able to get restraining orders, all that jazz. And Tiana comes ready. She brings proof. She brings the printouts of the harassment and all the stuff to show the judge. And James doesn't really have any of that because Tiana hasn't been trying to reach out to him. He does have his mom testify on his behalf, but you know, that's his mom. And you know what? I just have to tell you guys something now because I just cannot wait. I was going to wait till the end and do like a Shyamalan twist on you. But I just want to tell you now because it's ridiculous. That girl, Jessica, his girlfriend, the one who had been emailing her, the one who he was getting a restraining order against Tiana for, didn't exist, bro. He had made it up. It was him the whole time. Now, the judge that they both appeared in front of didn't really take the situation seriously, which is something we're going to talk about later because she or he, I can't remember, should have. But the judge did grant them both restraining orders and was basically like, both of you just need to stay away from each other. Now, Tiana was proactive, dude. She did everything she could to separate herself from him. She changed her email address. She deleted her social media. She changed her phone number. She did everything except for move out of her own apartment just to get away from this guy. Now, this might get a little bit confusing, but there are 3 different police departments that come into play in the story. There's the one that we've already visited, the one where Tiana reported that got her restraining order, right? That's the one we've discussed so far. This is near where Tiana lives. Now we're introducing another one, and this one is in Blomfield. Anyways, this police department's about an hour away from where James lives. And he goes in, and he's like, I would like to report a woman violating my restraining order against her. He was going in to complain about Tiana. So he went in there and he tells them that Tiana had sent him a notice saying that she was still in love with him. And he presented this notice to police. And police looked at it and immediately thought that it was real weird because the letter had like a photo of her and her full name, which they had dated before. They had been together. They were in a relationship. Why would she do that? So police like, that's weird. And they reach out to her. They reach out to her based on the phone number that was on the note. Because remember, James doesn't have her new number yet. So they call that number and they get no response. So they're like, that's weird. Tiana somehow, though I couldn't figure out how, finds out that police are like looking to speak to her. So she actually drives over there. She's like, you know what? I'm going to do this in person. She drives over there. She goes in. She's like, you rang, you know? And she talks to them and they talk to her. They run her information. They do all the jazz, all the things. And they realize there's nothing against her. Obviously, like there was no reason for this. And it was just all BS. But James would just not leave her alone. You know, he was stalking her. When he had her number, he called her all the time. He would show up where she lived. He would follow her or just sit outside of her apartment building all day in his car, or show up where she was out shopping, show up and call her at work. It was getting really scary. And Tiana finally decided to confide in her family about what was going on. she told them, like, she had been calling the police constantly because she called the police over and over to tell them that he had been violating the restraining order. For 6 weeks, she tried to reach out to the police department, and each time they didn't do anything about it. They had 6 weeks to help her, and they didn't. Like, okay, you want to get mad? You want to get really mad? So he's doing all of this. She's complaining. They're doing nothing. So he's starting to feel a little bit invincible, right? So he shows up at her home, and he ransacks and vandalizes her car. Okay, everything's thrown around. Her tires are slashed. He like really went to town on her car. So she goes to police to report this. She's like, I have a restraining order. Well, look at what happened. They were like, we can't really prove that it was he who did it. So sucks to suck, you're kind of on your own here because we need to know, we need to be able to prove that he's the one that did it. Obviously, you've got somebody who you've got a restraining order against and it would make sense that he did it, but we don't know that he did it, so we can't do anything about it. So Tiana, feeling at the end of her rope, actually contacts her dad. And she hadn't told her dad any of the stuff about James yet. She told her mom, and I think she told her sister, but not her dad, because, you know, dads. I mean, I don't know, but dads. I hear that they're... And so she tells her dad, and she's like, before that, she just wanted to try to handle it on her own, and now she felt like she couldn't. So she tells him what's going on, and he's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go out, we're going to get a security system, we're going to put a camera up, like a surveillance system, that's the word. We're going to put a camera up, and we're going to have it pointed at your car, so when he comes back, we can catch him on camera. That night, he spent hours with his daughter just talking to her and going over scenarios that could happen, with him pretending to be somebody else who was coming to attack her and he deciding what she would do to protect herself. Can you imagine how just traumatizing that would be for a father to do with his daughter, especially in the wake of what happens here? Oh my God, I can't. And it's sad because the cameras didn't work. You know what I mean? They did not stop him from showing up because just the day after they were installed, Tiana came home to find a note on her door. And the note said, quote, Tiana, forgive me. I never cheated on you. If I'm lying, God take my life. I'm sorry for everything I've done. Now, Tiana gets upset, obviously. She's super annoyed, but then she's like, the camera. I put up a camera. And let me tell you, this is so frustrating. They must have picked up the smallest videotape of all time because she goes to check the footage and it had recorded for so long that it missed somebody putting it on the note. I don't know how long videotapes typically are, but I guess this one wasn't long enough. So she's like, are you fucking serious? Because they didn't catch him doing it. She still goes to police and she still reports it. She gives him the note. She's like, what am I supposed to do here? And even though they couldn't prove it was him because he didn't sign his name or anything like that, they were like, okay. And they did go out and talk to him, and they even asked for a sample of his like handwriting to compare it to. And in the meantime, Tiana and her best friend headed out to the store to get the longest recording tape that they could find. Now, things come to a head, and police really had the opportunity to help Tiana on February 13th, 2009. I mean, they had, let's be real, they had a lot of opportunities to help her, but this is the time that she actually was able to take them proof. So Tiana was at work that day. And if memory serves me correctly, this was like a new job, a temporary job that she hadn't been at long and that he had no business knowing about. But somehow he did know about it. And he had gotten the phone number and he called her over and over at her job that day. And fortunately on this day, Tiana wasn't alone. She had a coworker who also answered the phone, also took the phone, took messages and things like that, and was able to talk to James on the phone and confirm that it was him. So she had a witness to the harassment. She told him over and over to stop calling her, and at the end of the day, she's like, you know what? I'm going to the police. She goes to the police with her accounts of what happened and a signed statement from her coworker, and is like, here's the proof that you've been asking for. Here's the proof that you needed. Now go do something. He keeps violating this restraining order. Now here's the thing, and this is very annoying. So prior to heading over to the police department, she had actually called the police from work, and they told her that she needed to report this to the police department near her work. So remember I said there were three police departments in play. The one near her home, which is I believe where she called, the one where he went and reported against her, and now the one that they're saying she needs to go to. So they're like, hey, you're at your work. This is a different police department, different jurisdiction. You need to go there. And I believe it was called Waterbury. Bury? Does it matter? I don't know. So she gets to that police department. She says what I said, like, here's all the information. Now do something about it. But the police there are saying that they're having a hard time believing that the restraining order is real. Like something's up with their system, and when they're searching it, it's not coming up. And she's like, come on, why is this happening to me? So they tell her that she needs to contact the other police department and have them fax over proof that she has a restraining order in the first place. Can you imagine how frustrating this would be? So she does that. She contacts them. She's like, this is what I need you to do. And basically, the restraining order comes over and they're like, okay, that's great. It does exist, but we are short-staffed because it's like a holiday weekend. So there's not really a ton we can do right now to help you. So Tiana leaves that police department very upset. As I'm sure you can imagine, if you are anything like me, this sounds like literal hell to me. To have to deal with calling places, just to deal with calling places in general, but calling places when you're in a state of stress and having to repeat your story over and over and over, and no one can help you, and you just seem like you're in this whirlwind of bullshit over the phone. That's my literal nightmare. It's enough to make me cry when I have to do things like that. I have a very weak constitution, and this is a serious situation. I'm like, I gotta call Verizon. Like, I'm a problem like that. But this is like a really serious situation that she has to deal with. So she leaves very upset. She calls her mom. She's crying in her car, and she's like, I went in and I told them, and they didn't believe me, and they treated me like dirt, and they said they can't help me, and I don't know what to do. Now, her mom went full mama bear mode and called the police department herself and was like, bro, what the fuck? Why aren't you helping my daughter? And they were like, ma'am, don't worry about it. Nothing's going to happen to your daughter. Everything's going to be fine. And she was like, I don't want my child to be a statistic. So you better hope nothing happens to her, because if something happens to her, you better move to another planet. And her mother said of the way that the police handled her situation, her daughter's situation, and I quote, I didn't know why they didn't take my daughter seriously. She went and visited the police station 33 times in 6 weeks. So now we're to February 14th, 2009, the day of Tiana's murder. That day, like usual, Tiana headed to the police station with her best friend Anna to drop off some emails, some like printouts of emails that she had received from James, even though he wasn't supposed to be emailing her. Some of the emails were normal, him asking her to please not speak to police, to please drop the restraining order, that he was getting desperate and that he was really taking a risk by even reaching out to her. You know, normal ones for her, for him, from her. No, for her, from him. And then some weird ones where he talked about death and just some dark things, like concerning things considering what's been going on so far. Now at this, police finally seemed like they were taking her seriously. They were like, listen, this is it. This is what we needed. This is all the proof that is required, and we are going to go out and arrest him. And Tiana was so happy. She left that police department feeling great. Her and Anna went out, they celebrated. Tiana got in the car and she called her ex-boyfriend Robert. I know I haven't mentioned him in a while. I haven't mentioned him since the beginning of the video, but there is something worth mentioning, okay? Tiana and her ex of 5 years that she had broken up with, and they were going to see if they could reconnect later in life. Well, they had done just that. They had reconnected in her time since she had broken up with James, and they were planning to get engaged. Tiana was so happy about this. Robert was so happy about this. Her family was so happy about this. And Tiana had been very open and honest about the fact that her and Robert were back together. On one of the times where James called her, where he wasn't supposed to be calling her, she told him, like, listen, this is over. I'm getting back with my ex. You've got to leave me alone. So he knew that she was planning to get back to Robert. And Robert had told her, because they were still doing long distance at this time, like over the phone, listen, I want to marry you. But I don't have a ring yet, just I want you to know it's coming. It's coming, Beasley, and it's going to knock you on your ass, right? She knew it was coming, but she had no idea how soon it was coming, because he had actually bought her a ring, and he intended on proposing to her on Valentine's Day, the day she was murdered. But then at the last minute, Robert and Tiana's plans had to be canceled. I guess Robert got sick. He got the flu for the first time in his entire life, of course, on this particular day. So they decided, okay, we're not going to get together now. We will get together next weekend, and that's when we'll make our engagement official. That's when he was going to make the engagement official, the weekend after she was killed. I know, man, it's so sad. It's just like that note, I was like, man. So she calls Robert. She tells him about the fact that James is going to be arrested. She calls her family. She tells them, and everybody's stoked. They're like celebrating the fact that she's finally going to get some peace, and this man's not going to be an ever-present thing in her life because he's going to be behind bars. And while talking to her family, she's talking to her mom, and they decide that Tiana should come and stay with her for the weekend. You know, just shake it off, get some time away, spend some time with family, do some laundry, you know, watch some movies, just spend some time together. They just wanted her to feel cared for and supported and safe. Now, before heading to her mom's, Tiana decided that she wanted to stop home, you know, pick up some laundry to do at her mom's because college student. And she thought that this was okay, that she would be safe to do this, to go to her home, because the police told her they were going to arrest James. So she went there with the idea in her head that they were doing just that. But this is going to piss you off, dude. They did not go to arrest James. They instead called him to ask him if what Tiana was saying was true. They told him, like, hey, Tiana just showed up here with these emails. And remember, he had begged her not to go to the cops, to drop the restraining order. And instead, she had gone and she had told them that he had said this. And he was like, listen, no, I didn't send these emails. I never violated the restraining order. I'm over it. I've moved on. I wouldn't do that. So I don't know what she's talking about. And police were like, okay, well, if we find out that you are the one who wrote these, you are going to be arrested. This call was made to James just 2 hours before he would kill Tiana. Now, do you think it's possible that this phone call to James, letting him know that Tiana had gone against his wishes, had gone to the police and complained about him, and now he thought he was going to get arrested because obviously they would be able to prove that he was the one that sent those emails? Do you think that could have anything to do with why he went to her home to kill her that day? To me, it definitely seems like it had something to do with that. Tiana's best friend Anna said of this, and I quote, "She put her face in the system that failed her. Her tires were slashed, so she got a security camera. She had her pepper spray. She took the measures that needed to be taken to protect herself. And the one thing that failed her was the system. The system that was supposed to be foolproof." So Tiana heads home, and you do get her murder picked up partially on her security camera. Thankfully, you don't see all of it because the camera was pointed at her car, but you do see part of it, part of her running, and you do hear her cries for help. So when she gets there, James is already there. He had driven over to her home with a knife to try to get access to her apartment to wait inside for her, but he wasn't able to. So he actually went as far as trying to call a locksmith to let him into her apartment, but the locksmith didn't allow him in because, hello, you don't live there and you have no proof that you do live there. So instead, he just sat outside and waited for her. And when she came home, he ambushed her with that knife and he stabbed her 18 times. 2 of those stabs hit her in her heart. Despite all these stabs, Tiana is still able to try to get herself help. So she pulls out her phone and she calls 911, telling the operator, quote, "I'm bleeding to death. My ex-boyfriend stabbed me to death." And then you hear the operator asking her more questions, trying to get more information, but you can just kind of hear her moaning and groaning and the sounds of her neighbors surrounding her. One neighbor telling her, don't worry, you're not going to die. But she was clearly in bad shape, and you can hear it in her voice. You can hear her voice fading. She eventually loses consciousness, and when police arrive, she's totally unresponsive in just a pool of her own blood, and she's rushed to the hospital. It's so sad, dude, because remember, when you're watching videos like this, that all of the information I'm giving you, this is all things that her family, her parents know. Her parents have heard this story, know the story better than any of us ever will, and have heard this 911 call, had to hear their daughter's final words and her final breaths. That's horrible. And I saw this thing, her mom, there was a message board, and I saw her mom actually came upon a video on YouTube, I believe it was, where she heard her daughter's 911 call. And it was very jarring to her. That's another reason I don't include that stuff in my videos, just in general, but it was very jarring to her. But she said, and this was very it got me in the heart, that in listening to it, she knew what stuck out to her is that her daughter didn't sound scared. She said her daughter sounded shocked and like she was in disbelief, but that she wasn't scared. She was brave. She said her daughter had a brave soul, and that's how she knew that God was with Tiana when she left this earth. Now, her parents get to the hospital just before midnight, and her mom said that she knew, as soon as she saw the receptionist's face when they identified themselves, they knew something was horribly wrong. And when they met with the surgeon, they just knew immediately that she hadn't made it because of the way that the surgeon looked at them. The surgeon said that they tried everything they could, even going as far as massaging her heart with their own hands, but that she had lost too much blood and there was no way that they could save her. And she had died just 10 days after her 25th birthday. I can't imagine that. I can't imagine getting that news and knowing that as a parent and receiving that and just having to continue on, just living after that. And it even gets worse because her father had to go in and identify her body in that condition. And her father said of this, and I quote, "So I went and identified her. She was on the table. I looked at her. There were stab wounds everywhere. And the first thing comes to mind. Who didn't? Didn't have to think too long. I know who did it. James Carter Jr." Now, James took off immediately after stabbing Tiana. That's why the neighbor saw a car drive off so fast. And while he was in his car running from the scene, he calls his brother on the phone, the brother who lived with him. And he told his brother what he did. And I can only imagine what that conversation must have been like. Now, I'm not exactly sure where he was planning to go or what he was planning to do exactly, but within an hour after Tiana dying, he was arrested. He was charged with her murder, he was charged with harassment, and he was charged with violating the restraining order, and he was held on a $2 million bond that was eventually raised to $3 million. Now, it took over 2 years for this case to go to trial, but once it did, they had a lot of evidence against James. I mean, first, his past behavior, right? The fact that neighbors saw his car speeding away at the time that she was killed. Her blood was found on his shirt. His brother testified saying that he had admitted to him that he had killed Tiana. And then Tiana herself had called the police and told them, "My ex-boyfriend stabbed me to death." She literally helped solve her own murder. He did, of course, try to deny this at first, saying that he wasn't even there, lying about his whereabouts, lying about the car he had been driving at the time, so it would seem like he wasn't driving the one that was seen at the scene. But it was clearly a bullshit. On top of that, though, the police never did find the murder weapon, and that is always helpful in these sort of cases, but what they did have against him was damning enough. In addition to the evidence that they already have against him, which is all the stuff that I just said, and the fact that part of Tiana's own murder was caught on her video camera, which was also very damning against him, they also had some letters. Some letters that he had written while in jail. Now, I don't know why he thought that these letters wouldn't be read, because, like, have you never watched a single episode of anything true crime related? Like, I feel like that's common knowledge. Apparently he didn't think so, or he did not care, because these letters were real bad and something that you really couldn't look past. In one letter, which was written in June of 2009, so just a few months after he killed her, he wrote that he didn't regret what he did at all because, quote, "that bitch was out for blood," end quote. He also said that Tiana and the police should have left him alone because now look what happened. And in another letter he wrote to his father, which was in June of 2011, so more than 2 years later, with time to sit in jail and have some clarity about the situation. But no, he didn't have that, of course. He wrote to his father saying of Tiana, and I quote, "I'm glad that bitch is dead. I hope her ass is burning in hell with a pitchfork as big as Texas in it." He also added that Tiana and her family needed to learn a lesson, and that's that people die when you refuse to back down. He's just an evil, evil man, honestly. Like, I was like, how could you say that? I don't understand people, but there was that. And then both the 911 call and the surveillance video were shown in court. In the surveillance video, you see Tiana running from her attacker, and on the 911 call, you hear in her own words her saying what happened, and both of those things were very powerful for the jury. Now, despite all that, his public defender did the best that he could. He never tried to actually prove that James was innocent, because, like, that would be, like, how are you gonna do that, man? There's way too much against him. What he tried to do instead was come up with a defense that would get him less time. So he tried to say that James had struggled or suffered from a, quote, extreme emotional distress, which was, and is, I believe, let me know, a defense for murder. And if he was able to convince the jury that this was the case, he would be charged with first-degree manslaughter instead of first-degree murder, so he could get as little as 20 years instead of 60 years. So that would be a significant decrease in time for James. His attorney tried to claim that James had some redeeming qualities like his big heart, his sense of humor. He said that James was well-educated, well-read, artistic, and creative, and that he was just a, quote, tragic figure who was emotionally fragile. Cry me a fucking river, bro. I could easily be described as a tragic figure who is emotionally fragile. Like, that really is the definition of me as a person, but you don't see me out here killing anybody. His attorney said that James had been under a lot of stress at the time that he had killed Tiana. He had been unable to hold down a job, and he had also been in, like, a custody battle with his prior girlfriend over his child, and these things compounded with the restraining order were just too much for him, and he snapped. He was not in control of himself when he killed Tiana, so it wasn't murder, plain and simple. And the prosecutor was like, with all due respect, and remember I'm saying, with all due respect, that is stupid as fuck, because clearly he knew what he was doing. He just wanted to have her. It was the oldest motive in the book. If he couldn't have her, nobody could. Now, was he emotional? I mean, I'm sure that he was. Like, a lot of people are emotional during the hearing. He did end up having to be escorted out of the room. I guess he started, like, crying really bad, and so he had to be taken out so that the jury wouldn't see all of that. You know, he was excused, and the judge was like, listen, to his attorney, was like, listen, you need to get your guy under control because he can't be acting like that in court. So he was out of the room, and there was a discussions to get him to like calm down before he would come back in. But in the end, he wasn't able to do that. So he ended up not even finishing out the trial in the courtroom. He was in like an adjoining room. And Tiana's family wasn't happy about this because they felt like he should have had to sit and listen and deal with what was happening to him. Anyways, ultimately, James Carter Jr. was found guilty for the murder of Tiana Notice, and he was given 60 years in prison, which was the max that he could get in the state of Connecticut at that time. I don't know if it's still that way. It probably is. I haven't heard anything about it changing. If you're from Connecticut and you know, let me know. So he was given 60 years for that, and then an additional, I believe it was 5 years for violating the restraining order. So he was 31 at the time that he was, you know, put in prison. So he is not eligible for parole until I believe it's February of 2069. The judge said of James's sentence, and I quote, "You were inches from her, looking at her while you were stabbing her and causing her death. You need to be punished, and society needs to be protected." Nearly 50 relatives and friends of Tiana's were present during this hearing, and after his, you know, sentencing was read out, they all just started crying and hugging each other. And for what it's worth, if it's worth anything, James did reach out to Tiana's family to apologize and, you know, feel bad about what he did. I believe he sent this letter like the day after he was convicted, and he said to her family, quote, "I hope you can find it in your hearts and prayers to forgive me for what I've done. I apologize sincerely from my heart and soul. God forgives, and hopefully you can too. Please accept my apology, question mark." Her family, though I did read the reports, didn't really take much stock into what he said, especially because of how he acted after he killed her, the things that he wrote in those letters, and the fact that he like bragged about it. So they were like, whatever. Since then, James has tried to appeal, but it has been unsuccessful, which is good because I think he's a dick and he should be in jail. And at least for now, like at least that, we're done with James. We're done with James, but we're not done with our story. But we're done with the James part of our story, but there is more to discuss. So Tiana's family was fucking pissed, dude. They were so pissed at the way her case had been handled from the beginning, and they had a real fire in them for justice and accountability. They wanted the police to be held accountable for what happened to Tiana because they had failed her on such a serious level. I mean, she had literally gone to 3 different police departments. 3 different police departments were involved in this case, and all of them failed to help her. Her family filed lawsuits against officers in Plainville, Waterbury, and Bloomfield, the 3 stations that she had gone to try to get help. And after all was said and done, Tiana's family was offered $10 million. Now, I did see that it doesn't appear they received that much. I could be wrong. It was a little bit confusing, but I saw it reported that they may have settled for a lesser undisclosed amount, but I could also be confused because there were like several different officers being sued from 3 different locations, and some settled and some were found immune to legal action and some weren't. But either way, they sued and they won. During one of these hearings, though, just because I thought it was worth mentioning, one of the attorneys for one of these cops was like, listen, Connecticut cops cannot be expected to sort of guess and try to predict whether or not a situation is going to end up fatal. Like that's out of the parameters of their job description, which maybe is true. However, in this particular case, there were like a ton of red flags. Now, as a result of this case, the state of Connecticut did look into the systemic dysfunctions and failures to help Tiana. And in doing so, they found that there were a lot more issues than just like the police officers at those stations. They found that the judge who issued like Tiana's restraining order had failed to execute on it whenever it was brought up. And this minimized Tiana's experience and the judge failed to comprehend the gravity of the evidence. Apparently, the judge even compared their relationship to Romeo and Juliet and was like, aren't you guys just going to get back together in a week anyway? It was like super condescending. And this was seen, like when it was reviewed and looked into later, was seen as like not cool, dude, because it trivializes and lacks understanding for those who are in domestic violence situations who finally get brave enough to try to get themselves help and then are not taken seriously. And in so many of these situations, the abused do end up going back to their abusers. And it's a vicious cycle, and you being condescending towards those that happens to is not cool, especially in your position, Mr./Mrs. Judge. The state basically said that when the victim of domestic abuse and or his or her family state that they're afraid for their safety, it is the job of those who serve in the criminal justice system to stand up and hear their cry. It also said that police need to be better in how they respond to these issues as well. And it was acknowledged that it's not easy to make that call, but when you don't make the call correctly, it can be lethal to not see the signs of danger. And they basically said that even though it is hard to see these signs, when you ignore the cries of these victims, the results, the fatalities of these women, these men, oftentimes women, but these people, when you ignore them, the price is too high. The price is too high. Do too much. Go farther than you think you need to if it could save somebody's life, right? Right. Now, just like Tiana was, her family, Tiana's family, is an absolute powerhouse. They went on to create a foundation in Tiana's name, which is always an amazing thing when I see families do this. And this was the Tiana Angelique Foundation. And the foundation, with help of the Connecticut state senator and a former state legislator, were able to ensure that laws were toughened to prevent domestic violence murders. And this wasn't just in Connecticut, but they've also worked on making sure that other states take the deadly dangers of domestic violence seriously. Tiana's case, in addition to several others, really helped prompt state lawmakers to approve these new tougher laws. And the new laws required that police have to arrest people who commit violence against somebody they're dating. And they expanded on the list of crimes that a judge can issue protective orders over. This also required offenders to give up their firearms and required electronic monitoring for certain domestic violence offenders, which is something we're going to get into more thoroughly shortly. Her family was determined to fix the failures in our system and to get more action from the courts, the legislators, the police officers, everybody. They wanted everyone just taking this more seriously because stalking and harassment, domestic violence, is not taken as seriously as it should be. I've talked to friends who have dealt with stalking situations, and I'm not going to get into it because it's not my business, but they're not taken seriously until we can't do anything till something happens. Well, sometimes something happens and it's too much and it's too late. The foundation, along with help from a Harvard law professor named Diane Rosenfield, were able to work to get legislation for this GPS electronic monitoring system. I'm really good at speaking today, can you tell? Basically, what would happen is a GPS monitor would be put on offenders who were considered to be high risk, and they would determine whether or not this person was considered to be high risk by doing a lethality assessment, where they'd basically go through this assessment to determine if the situation at hand could result in someone being murdered. With this system, the victim involved would be alerted if the person wearing the monitoring device was near their home, their work, or family members' homes, because her family truly believes that if something like this had been in place, if James had been being monitored, then Tiana would have known that he was at her house, she wouldn't have gone there, and she may still be alive. Now, we've discussed a lot here. I feel like the comment section is going to be going off. Like, I can just feel it, that people are going to have a lot to say. And I'm glad, because there's a lot to say. A conversation needs to happen. It needs to keep happening so people take these things seriously. But now I'm going to close out this video. And I want to end this with a quote. And this is a quote that's actually a poem. It's a poem that Tiana herself wrote. Because, again, she was a very creative, artistic person. She wrote poetry. This is one of her poems. She wrote this in 2008, so the year before she was killed. And when I read it, there were certain passages in it that just honestly chilled me a little bit. And so I wanted to read them to you. This is a passage from her poem that was called Chapter Closed. Chapter Closed. And this is where she said, quote, "Can't say I didn't see it coming. I prolonged the process long enough. Sometimes you want to give a man the benefit of the doubt. To prove he is who he says he is, I was disappointed. For all the words were lies, and his actions spoke louder. Let his emptiness comfort him at night, like the cement walls that he has become accustomed to." And with that statement, that, my friends, is the story of the murder of 25-year-old Tiana Notice. I hope you found this case to be interesting and informative, and I hope I gave you all the information you would want when looking into this case. And of course, I want to thank you for remembering Tiana with me today. And now, considering everything I've told you, I want to revisit the question of the day now. I gave it to you in the beginning so you could have it rocking around in your brain, and now we are at the point where I want you to answer it. And that question is this: what do you believe could have been done to save Tiana Notice? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. But that's it, guys. That is the video. So before you leave, please don't forget to leave me a comment down below with any case suggestions that you have. As you guys know, or if you don't know, I love looking into the cases you suggest because I know you're filled with good ideas and good taste. Otherwise, you would not be here. And you often leave cases that I've never heard of before, or cases that just need more coverage, and those are the ones that I prefer to cover. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing the bell. I put out a new video every single week, sometimes 2 a week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you specifically, you. And if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media is listed down below, along with a link to my membership, where you get early access to non-sponsored videos, occasional polls, things like that. I want to say one last thank you to Dossier for sponsoring today's video. It's sponsors like Dossier that make it possible for me to put out videos as consistently as I do. And a big thank you to you guys for always being so supportive of all of my sponsors. You rock. Don't ever change. And with all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday. And I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.